Hello everybody, my name is GrimmyBird2458 and I'm knocking things off my desk. So, today we're going to be talking about a couple of Slingfires that I've made that are both integrations, and I wanted to show them off today. So, let's get into it. I'm going to pick up that thing that I just kicked off my bench. Alright, so the origin story, I guess, of these two blasters is the first one here. This is a Slingfire, Nerf Slingfire, and then a Super Soaker Rattler integration along with a Maverick rail for the top. I'll post pictures of the blasters in the corners here so you can get a better idea of where they come from and whatnot. So I got this idea from Mr. Nathan. He did an integration with a Slingfire and Rattler, and this is kind of my first major Springer integration. I've done smaller integrations with Springers and stuff, but I haven't really done anything to this level. And when I was making this, I wanted to take this to a whole nother level of my creative abilities. So what I decided to do was my first time at this point in time, which was weathering. Now, if you know weathering, then you probably know Iron Gopher. Iron Gopher is a really good weathering artist, I guess, when it comes to Nerf. And the dude is very talented. I have some of his work in person. It's far beyond beautiful. And this is kind of my first entry into weathering, and I'm really happy with how it came out. There's some areas where I got overspray and whatnot, but that's perfectly fine. So the base of the paint job was a semi-gloss Rust-Oleum black with a semi-gloss Rust-Oleum white, and I have created lore for these two blasters, so I'll give a very brief highlight reel of the lore for this guy. So in 1997, this is a complete, mock-up of lore. It's not based on anything in real life. A war was going on, and they wanted to produce lever-action rifles to combat a kind of undead army that had risen, and they wanted to make a civilian version, so this is the civilian version. A lot more compact and a lot less chunky. You could commonly cut the stock off of it and have just a very easily loadable lever action gun, so to speak. This is also my first integration using Smoothcast. Smoothcast are these two bottles here, part A and part B. They basically are two liquids that you mix together, and they basically become plastic, and it morphs around the shells of the blasters and kind of bonds them internally. It's like a liquid, so it'll seep through any pinholes or any cracks in the shell, and it'll permanently seal them. Smoothcast is great, it's just expensive. And then as for internals, I have a regular Springer, or regular Slingfire, my bad, set of internals. The only exception is lock removal, and then I have the spring from a Buzzbee blaster, probably from a, Tech 4 or something. I also have a metal lever that I got from a local who was selling a broken Slingfire that they had, that had a short dart kit. This is a full-length blaster. This also has the Raptor Strike 6-round magazines, and it also has a plate on it that says "This Side Up Electrolux," which in this kind of fantasy world, Electrolux made the blasters, but in reality I found this on a piece at a Goodwill outlet, and this came off of a vacuum extension, or like some vacuum thing from like the 80s or something. It looked old. We have part of the Slingfire's grip here. Let me get a stock Slingfire and show you what these two look side to side. Okay, so I have a really dusty Slingfire here. As you can see, I managed to cover up all of this stuff. There was a lot of trimming when it came to combining these shells, but I took this piece and I moved it all the way down here to complete the front end because I wasn't happy with the hole that was down here, and I wasn't going to be comfortable just plating over it. And the barrel here is from a modulus that I cut off, and the stock has a duct tape wrap to kind of give a pseudo apocalyptic look, because the point of this blaster is to look really old. The stock has been painted a dark brown, and it has some light. I don't know how well the camera's going to show it, but it has some really good weathering on it, in my opinion, from black. And then accidentally hitting it with the rag that I use for this. That's about it for this Slingfire. I completed it a while ago, and this is the blaster that caused these scars on my wrist. I was hot gluing these two shells together, and I tipped it sideways, and the hot glue hadn't fully dried, and it dripped onto my arm, and I won't go into specifics, but yeah, so this blaster holds a place on my body and in my heart. As for the next one, I wanted to continue the theme of integrating super soakers that were beyond dead. I also want to thank Prickly's Nerf Mods. He sent me the Slingfire and the Rattler shell, so thank you, dude. So I went to a Goodwill outlet and I came up with a Slingfire and a Rattler, and this is probably the best of the two because I really refined my Slingfire, kind of modifying because I had to deal with this one so much that I kind of had a good idea of what to do with this guy. So here's an overall profile of it, and you can see a lot of different detailing and other things. So the Super Soaker Rattler is up here, this front muzzle and grip area into this side of the shell. And as we can tell from our stock Slingfire, you can see where the cuts and kind of cover-ups were made for these two shells. The grip is off of the blaster. It was very, very sun-faded along with this thing. It was like a lightly toasted marshmallow. And I wanted to try more different things, so with this, I actually scarred this blaster. It has actual, like, scrapes to it, and the way I achieved this was a triangular file, a burring bit on a Dremel, and a rock. Actually getting a rock and just hitting this thing and scarring it on more vulnerable areas on the blaster. This one is actually functional, unlike the other Slingfire. The magazine is off of a Desolator, and it has silver on the bottom and the same black, a semi-gloss black on it, and it has the same plate. I managed to find the same plate at a Goodwill outlet like days later. It was amazing. The Slingfire was found at an outlet a while ago, and it has a Busby crossbow spring in it, which was also from an outlet. And then I have Rebel dart holders back here. They used to be attachments that you can slide on the blasters. Hilariously, both found at the outlet. That I super glued and then epoxied into place. So these guys aren't going anywhere, but I wouldn't recommend dropping these, face on. I also did some light stitching and engraved Grim, and I also have 2458 and then some other scratching and whatnot. This is showing color. I had completed this blaster a couple of months ago. This has the same washes as the previous Slingfire. Started off with a brown wash to go over the entire blaster shell, and then went over the brown after it dried with a lighter color, like a lighter tan color, to really give it the new rust look, along with the older rust look. I sanded down all the lightning bolt detailing and all the other garbage that was on the Super Soaker, and then I also put some dollar store beads on here. These are just super glued into place. And then I put some other ones in here, and this is all styrene sheeting. cut into some angles and stuff. And it has the original Super Soaker's barrel here. I did have to paint this orange because this was so sun faded that it wasn't orange anymore, it was like a white. You can see the battered upness of this. That was just from this thing going up and down. That was the original color. And this thing is probably one of my favorite blasters I've ever made. It has a wrap from some self-adhesive tape, and it has the pseudo wrap on the Slingfire, taken off, and then this is all putty, and it's all been sanded down. And I actually gripped this thing with my hands and formed finger slots out of it with my hands to give this thing a more complete look. Although it is useless with the lever here. But if you were to hold it here, it'd be comfortable for whatever reason. So this actually has parts donated from NeoSeeker, who's a avid person on my streams and an avid person on Discord and Instagram. And he gave me the metal lever and the metal bolt sled that's in here. And I very much appreciate him because these levers are like $55 still on eBay and like Etsy and whatnot, which is insane. I don't know how many people are modifying Slingfires anymore. This is still full dart, so it's not going to be too picky. It's mostly stock internals anyway. Same thing, lock removal, crossbow spring, Busby crossbow spring, and then it has the metal parts in it. They only add to structural things, they don't actually add to performance. This just adds comfort and reliability. The screw ports on this thing were really bad. The screws were all rusted. I had to replace the screws, which isn't a problem because they're just silver screws. But the ones that I had to drill out, I super glued some old screws that I had lying around that were like hex key screws into the shell. You can see them there. And I have one on the soaker grip there. It's a very subtle detail, and if you didn't know what you were looking at, it would be very hard to notice. I also managed to cut off the old gear release button there for the locks, and I just covered the hole with a bead and just super glued that down. It's not on the other side, of course, because there isn't really a need, but yeah, I love how this blaster came out. It's probably my favorite blaster I've ever made. These two shells are very, very nice when taken together. So yeah, I think that's about it. This has a, I guess, tractor green with semi-gloss black, and it has the same brown as the other stock did. It has some brass detailing and some light silver detailing in some areas, which really brings this thing to life. So I guess we'll go see this guy shooting, because this essentially has the same internals, but it doesn't perform the same. But we'll go to some firing footage of this guy compared to a stock Slingfire, and we'll cut back to my thoughts and opinions on this blaster. Alright, so we have a stock Slingfire here, just grabbed from the stockpile of blasters I have, and we're going to be firing some Adventure Force waffles through it, just to give a good comparison for everything. So we'll try and do this as good as possible. Oh, it's already primed. Now time for the Slingfire integration. I actually have a name for these guys. I didn't mention it before, but this is the military version. as opposed to the civilian rifle, which I showed. Military, as in it just has a chunkier front. But we're going to be firing the same waffle head darts out of this guy. Blaster's too fun to just plink around with. So, let me know in the comment section below what you think of these two integrations. Let me actually move this camera up so you can fucking see what I'm looking at. So again, let me know what you think of these two integrations. I spent a lot of time working on these. I worked a lot of this on stream actually. Just the filing and sanding. I actually use 2-part epoxy for most of this stuff just to get familiar with it, of course. So, if you guys have any kind of questions about these two blasters, let me know. If you want to know some of the lore, I can get you into it just a little bit. I don't have a full fleshed out story or whatnot on a piece of paper, but it's in my head. I just have to actually write it out. But these guys might be for sale soon, I'm not sure. I do need to make up cash for some other projects in mind, and I don't really have a place to store these, and it'd be great to get these into the cosplayer hands or whatnot, because these would be great. They do have orange tips, which everything I make must have an orange tip. Even commissions. I won't accept a commission with a black tip for the blaster. Overall thoughts, this freaking the Super Soaker Rattler is also just the Scatter Blast is just a comfortable blaster to start with. So just to have the grip and the overall likeness and shape of it is amazing. Also the nice detail of these rear sights matching up with these front sights. It's a bit hard to see, but the rails or the sight's a bit big, but if you are actually just shoulder it regularly, it's pretty good. And the shells actually came out really straight on these two guys. I'm really happy with the integration with these, and I'm happy with these blasters and how they came out. So if you have any comments, suggestions, concerns, put them in the comment section below. I've been Greenbeaver 2458, and I'll be seeing you guys in a different video. Peace out.